Imagine pouring $300,000, your blood, sweat, and entire life into your family, only for them to turn their backs, mocking you as a failure, a worthless nobody unfit for the wealth they squandered. What happens when your own son stands by, letting them turn your sacrifices into a knife plunged straight into your heart? I'm Walter Grayson, the man who built skyscrapers from Scottsdale's desert dust, yet they thought they could bury me with lies. This Christmas, I walked into their lavish party, where every dollar was mine, and shattered their world to pieces. Could you endure a betrayal this devastating? Stay with me, this story will leave you speechless. Subscribe to RevengeX on YouTube, like, share, and comment. What betrayal cut you deepest? Share it from your heart. Welcome to RevengeX, where electrifying stories of betrayal and triumph set your soul ablaze. We're thrilled to have you join our community of viewers who celebrate unyielding resilience and fierce courage. Hit that subscribe button to never miss a heart-pounding tale, and it'd be incredible if you smashed the like button, shared this video, or dropped a comment with the time and city or country you're watching from. Your likes, shares, and heartfelt comments are the greatest spiritual gift, the fuel that keeps this channel burning bright. Now, buckle up for a story that'll hit you right in the feels. Let's dive in. My name is Walter Grayson, a 65-year-old real estate magnate from the sun-drenched sprawl of Scottsdale, Arizona. I built my empire from the ground up, turning desert dust into a portfolio of luxury condos and gated communities that gleam under the relentless sun. 3 decades of sweat, 16-hour days, and a heart full of ambition made me a name in this city, a name that opened doors, commanded respect, and, I thought, secured my place in my family's heart. I've poured millions into their lives, my son Ethan, his wife Sophia, their polished McMansion in Paradise Valley, their kids' private schools, even the sleek Tesla in their driveway. I believe family was my legacy, my anchor. But on a crisp December evening, that belief shattered like glass under a sledgehammer, and the betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I sat in Ethan's sprawling living room, sinking into a buttery leather sectional that cost me $20,000 to furnish their dream home. The air smelled of Sophia's lavender diffusers, a cloying scent that barely masked the tension. Their 20-foot Christmas tree glittered with Swarovski ornaments, each one a silent testament to my generosity. I'd just offered to host Christmas dinner at my estate, picturing my famous smoked brisket, the kind my late wife, Evelyn, used to rave about, dripping with molasses glaze and served with her secret cornbread recipe. "It's the taste of home," she'd say, her eyes sparkling. I thought Ethan would light up at the memory. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably, his Rolex glinting as he rubbed his neck. "Dad," he said, his voice low like he was confessing a crime, "you're not welcome here for Christmas." The words hit like a freight train. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean, not welcome?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart pounding like a war drum. Ethan avoided my eyes, staring at the imported marble coffee table I'd paid for when Sophia deemed their old one tacky. "Sophia's parents, Victor and Elaine Caldwell, are coming," he mumbled. They'd prefer if you didn't join us. It's about their traditions, keeping things refined. Refined. The word stung like a slap. I'd bankrolled their entire lifestyle, $300,000 in mortgage payments over 5 years, $50,000 for their kitchen remodel, even $10,000 for Sophia's essential wine cellar. And now I was being cast out of my own son's home because I didn't fit the Caldwell's vision of class. Sophia sauntered in, her heels clicking on the hardwood I'd financed, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Walter, don't take it personally," she said, her smile as cold as the desert night. "My parents just want a certain vibe, old money elegance, Your barbecue and beer stories don't quite mesh." Her words dripped with condescension, slicing through me. I'd built an empire, employed hundreds, paid more in taxes than Victor Caldwell ever earned in his cushy law firm career. Yet I was reduced to a caricature, a nouveau rich outsider who embarrassed them. My best friend, Tom Rivera, a retired contractor who'd been with me since the early days, had warned me about Sophia. "She's a snake, Walt," he'd said over whiskey at our favorite dive bar. "She's using you, and Ethan's too spineless to stop her." I'd brushed him off, clinging to the hope that family meant loyalty. Now, Tom's words echoed like a prophecy. But the betrayal didn't stop there. As I sat there, reeling, Sophia's brother, Nathan Caldwell, strutted in a smug, 30-something hedge fund bro who'd borrowed $50,000 from me last year for a surefire investment that mysteriously vanished. "Look, Walt," Nathan said, leaning against the counter with a smirk. Mom and Dad just want a Christmas with people who get their world art. Literature. The Hamptons. No offense, but you're more strip mall than symphony. The room spun. My own son sat silent, letting his wife and her brother gut me. I glanced at Ethan, hoping for a flicker of defense, but he just stared at his shoes. My sister-in-law, Clara, a kind-hearted nurse who'd always treated me like family, had once said, "Ethan's lost himself to Sophia's world." I hadn't believed her. Now, I saw it clear as day. The final blow came from an unexpected corner. My longtime accountant, Marjorie Klein, a woman I'd trusted with my finances for 20 years, had been quietly feeding Sophia information about my accounts. I'd later discover she'd tipped Sophia off about my liquid assets, helping her plan a new vacation home purchase I was expected to fund. The betrayal was a triple stab: my son's silence, Sophia's elitism, and Marjorie's duplicity. My mind churned, torn between rage and heartbreak. I'd given everything: my savings, my retirement, my pride to people who saw me as a walking checkbook. The injustice burned. How could Ethan, the boy I'd raised to value family, let these vipers dictate my worth? How could Marjorie, who'd seen me build my legacy, sell me out for a cut of Sophia's schemes? I stood, my knees trembling, not from age, but from the weight of realization. "So this is it?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. "After everything, $300,000 in payments, the cars, the vacations, you're throwing me out like trash?" Sophia rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Walter. It's just one holiday." Nathan snickered, and Ethan muttered, "Dad, maybe you could visit Clara instead." Clara, who'd invited me to her modest Tucson home for Christmas, where her kids would hug me and call me Grandpa Walt, without a second thought. The contrast was a knife twist. I grabbed my coat, the one I'd bought on sale because every dollar went to them, and walked to the door. "Merry Christmas," I said, my voice ice cold. "To your refined family." As I stepped into the Arizona night, the glow of their mansion mocked me a monument to my sacrifice, now a cage I was locked out of. In my truck, the engine's rumble couldn't drown out the storm in my head. I drove past Scottsdale's glittering lights, each one a reminder of the empire I'd built and the family I'd lost. Tom's words rang again. "You're too good for them, Walt." But goodness hadn't saved me. The numbers spun in my mind: $300,000, 5 years of payments, countless loans for Sophia's whims. I'd sold a rental property to cover their down payment, skipped vacations to pay their taxes, eaten cheap takeout while they dined at steakhouses. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated erasure of my worth. Sophia's family had planned this, whispering behind my back, plotting to exclude me while milking my wealth. And Ethan, my own blood, had let them. As I pulled into my driveway, the modest ranch house I hadn't renovated in years because every cent went to them, my phone buzzed. Sophia's name flashed, probably ready to demand another favor. I ignored it. Instead, I thought of Clara, who'd texted earlier, "You're always welcome here, Walt." Her loyalty was a lifeline, but it couldn't erase the gaping wound. I sat in the dark, the weight of 30 years of love and sacrifice crashing down. They'd taken my money, my dignity, and now my place at their table. But as the desert stars blinked above, a fire kindled inside me. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something they'd never see coming, a reckoning that would shake their perfect little world to its core. The desert night pressed against my truck's windows as I drove home, the Scottsdale skyline fading into a blur of betrayal. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as the reality of what had just happened sank in like a stone in my gut. I'd given everything: my wealth, my time, my heart, to Ethan and Sophia, only to be tossed aside like a used napkin at their fancy Christmas dinner. The sting wasn't just the rejection, it was the realization that every sacrifice I'd made for them had been twisted into a weapon against me. My mind churned, replaying the years of generosity that had led to this moment, each memory a fresh cut in a wound that refused to heal. Back at my ranch house, the silence was deafening. The place felt like a museum of my past life, faded photos of Evelyn and me on the mantle, her smile frozen in time, a reminder of when family meant something real. I poured a glass of bourbon, the good stuff I'd saved for rare moments of victory, but tonight it tasted like defeat. I sank into my old recliner, the one I hadn't replaced because every spare dollar went to Ethan's mortgage, Sophia's designer bags, or their kids' elite summer camps. 5 years. $300,000 in mortgage payments. Another $100,000 in loans for their vacations, their renovations, their goddamn organic grocery deliveries. I'd sold 2 investment properties to keep them afloat when Ethan's startup tanked, skipped my own doctor visits to cover their property taxes, and eaten ramen while they sipped artisanal cocktails at rooftop bars. And for what? To be told I wasn't refined enough for their table. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, Sophia's name flashing like a neon warning sign. I ignored it, but the buzzing didn't stop. Then a text from Nathan, her sleazeball brother, popped up. Yo, Walt, quit being a crybaby. You're not cut out for our scene, old man. Stick to your strip malls and leave the high life to us. The words hit like a punch to the jaw, raw and street sharp, dripping with the kind of arrogance only a trust fund punk like Nathan could muster. I could picture his smirk, that same smug grin he'd flashed when he borrowed $50,000 for his crypto scam, promising me a cut that never came. My blood boiled, but beneath the rage was something worse, grief. Grief for the son I'd raised, who now let his wife's family treat me like gutter trash. Then came the second blow, a voicemail from Marjorie Klein, my accountant of 20 years. Her voice was clipped, professional, but there was a tremor in it. Walter, we need to talk about your accounts. Sophia reached out about reallocating some funds. Call me. Reallocating? My heart sank. I logged into my bank app, hands shaking, and there it was. An unauthorized transfer of $20,000 to an account I didn't recognize, flagged as consulting fees to a shell company linked to Nathan. Marjorie had facilitated it, bypassing my approval. The betrayal was a gut shot, tripled by the fact that she'd been at my side when I signed my first $1 million deal, when Evelyn died, when I handed over my life savings to keep Ethan's family afloat. She'd sold me out, likely for a kickback from Sophia's clan. I stood, pacing the worn carpet, my mind a battlefield. Part of me wanted to call Tom Rivera, my old friend who'd always had my back, who'd warned me about Sophia's greed and Nathan's schemes. Tom would be at his bar right now, pouring drinks and telling stories about our construction days, loyal as ever. But another part of me, the part that still loved Ethan, screamed to give him a chance to explain, to believe he wasn't complicit in this. That hope clashed with the truth. Ethan had sat there, silent, while his wife and her brother shredded my dignity. The internal struggle was torture love versus rage, trust versus betrayal. I'd built my empire on calculated risks, but this wasn't business. This was family, and the stakes cut deeper than any deal gone wrong. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. It was Clara, my sister-in-law, her face etched with worry. Walt, I heard what happened, she said, stepping inside with a warmth that felt like a lifeline. Ethan called me, trying to justify it, but I told him he's a damn fool for letting Sophia and her parents treat you like this. Her loyalty was a bomb, but it couldn't erase the pain. Clara had always been my rock, the one who'd cooked for me after Evelyn's funeral, who'd invited me to her Tucson home when Ethan started pulling away. You don't deserve this, she said, her voice breaking. You're worth more than their whole damn country club put together. Before I could respond, my phone lit up again this time, a call from Victor Caldwell, Sophia's father. I answered, bracing myself. Listen, you low-rent wannabe, he snarled, his voice pure East Coast venom. You think you can sulk and ruin our Christmas? You're nothing but a glorified landlord with delusions of grandeur. Stay in your lane, or I'll make sure every business contact in Scottsdale knows you're a deadbeat. The threat was a sledgehammer, his words dripping with the kind of street-tough bravado you'd hear in a dive bar brawl. I gripped the phone, my pulse racing. Victor wasn't just excluding me from Christmas. He was waging war on my reputation, leveraging his law firm connections to paint me as a nobody. But the third shock came from an unexpected source. My neighbor, Jake Torres, a slick real estate agent who'd always been friendly, sent a group text to our business network. Heard Walt Grayson's losing it. Skipped out on family duties. Bad look for a guy preaching community values. The message included a screenshot of a private email I'd sent Ethan, begging him to reconsider the Christmas ban, a vulnerable plea I'd thought was between us. Jake had gotten it from Sophia, who'd forwarded it to humiliate me. The betrayal was a triple whammy. Ethan's betrayal of my trust, Sophia's weaponization of my words, and Jake's opportunistic backstabbing to curry favor with the Caldwells. He sank back into my recliner, bourbon forgotten, my heart, a vajon. The pain wasn't just the money, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $50,000 in loans, $20,000 stolen by Marjorie's scheme. It was the erasure of my role as a father, a provider, a man. I'd built skyscrapers, but I couldn't build a bridge to my son. The fight inside me raged. Part of me wanted to confront Ethan, to scream at him for letting this happen. Another part wanted to curl up and mourn the family I'd lost. Clara sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone, Walt," she said. "Tom and I, we've got you. But you need to fight back. They don't get to win." Her words sparked something, a flicker of defiance in the ashes of my grief. Victor's threats, Nathan's insults, Sophia's schemes, Marjorie's treachery, Jake's gossip, they thought they could bury me. But I wasn't just a checkbook. I was Walter Grayson, a man who'd clawed his way from nothing. As the desert moon rose, I made a vow. I'd cancel every payment, expose every lie, and make them regret the day they thought they could break me. The war was just beginning, and I'd show them what a real fighter looked like. The desert moon hung low over Scottsdale, casting a silver glow through my kitchen window as I sat at the table, the bourbon bottle now half empty. Clara's words, "They don't get to win," echoed in my skull, a battle cry against the storm of betrayal that threatened to drown me. My heart was a war zone, torn between the love I still carried for Ethan and the rage that burned hotter with every new wound. Sophia's sneers, Nathan's taunts, Marjorie's treachery, Victor's threats, Jake's gossip, each was a brick in the wall they'd built to shut me out. But tonight, something snapped. The man who'd spent decades building an empire wasn't about to let a pack of vipers tear it down. I was done being their doormat. The fight was on, and it was about to get ugly. My phone buzzed again, relentless, like a wasp trapped in a jar. This time, it was a voicemail from Sophia, her voice dripping with street-sharp venom. "Yo, Walt, you pathetic old geezer," she hissed, each word a calculated jab. "Think you can ghost us and play the victim? You're just a washed-up slumlord who got lucky. Keep sulking, and we'll make sure everyone in this town knows you're a deadbeat who can't even show up for family." The message ended with a laugh, cold and cruel, the kind you'd hear in a back-alley deal gone sour. My hands shook as I set the phone down, not from fear, but from a fury so raw it felt like it could burn the house down. She wasn't just excluding me from Christmas. She was rewriting my life, painting me as a failure to protect her perfect facade. Then came the first shock of the night, a gut punch I hadn't seen coming. An email from my lawyer, Greg Harper, a straight-shooting guy who'd handled my contracts for 15 years. "Walter, urgent," the subject read. My stomach churned as I opened it. Greg had discovered that Sophia had forged my signature on a loan application, pulling $30,000 from my business account to fund a charity gala that was just a front for her and Nathan's latest scam. Greg, loyal as ever, had frozen the transaction, but the betrayal cut deep. Sophia hadn't just used me. She'd stolen my name, my trust, my legacy. I pictured her at one of her glitzy events, toasting with champagne I'd paid for, laughing with her elite friends while I ate takeout in a house I couldn't afford to fix. The injustice was a knife in my chest, twisting with every breath. My mind spiraled, caught in a tug-of-war between despair and defiance. I'd given them everything, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, countless sacrifices, because I believed in family, in Ethan, in the promise I'd made to Evelyn to always protect our son. But now, that promise felt like a chain, dragging me into a pit of humiliation. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let Sophia's family turn me into their personal ATM while they mocked me behind my back? The shame was suffocating, but beneath it, a spark of resolve flickered. I wasn't the fool they thought I was. I was Walter Grayson, a man who'd built skyscrapers from nothing, and I'd be damned if I let them destroy me. The doorbell rang, sharp and jarring. It was Tom Rivera, my old friend, his weathered face etched with concern. "Clara called me," he said, stepping inside with a six-pack of Coors, his usual peace offering. "Walt, you look like hell. What's going on?" I poured out the story, Sophia's voicemail, Victor's threats, Marjorie's betrayal, Jake's gossip, and now Sophia's forged loan. Tom's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with the kind of loyalty that comes from years of shared battles. "Those leeches," he growled. "I told you Sophia was trouble, but this is next level. You gotta hit back, Walt, hard." His words were a lifeline, pulling me from the edge of despair. Tom had been there through my darkest days, Evelyn's cancer, the lean years before my business took off, and his faith in me was a reminder of who I was before I let Ethan's family grind me down. But the second shock hit like a thunderbolt. My phone lit up with a text from Lisa Bennett, a local reporter I'd known for years, who'd covered my charity work. "Walt, heads up," it read. "Got a tip from Victor Caldwell. He's pitching a story to my editor saying you're dodging taxes and neglecting family. I don't buy it, but they're pushing hard. Call me." My heart stopped. Victor wasn't just threatening my reputation. He was orchestrating a public execution, using his law firm clout to smear me in the Scottsdale Tribune. The audacity was breathtaking, but the betrayal was worse. Lisa, a neutral party who'd always been fair, was now caught in their web, forced to consider their lies. My mind reeled, picturing the headline, "Local tycoon turns deadbeat." The thought of my life's work, reduced to tabloid fodder, was a fresh wound, deepening the ache of being cast out by my own son. The third blow came from an unexpected corner. My assistant, Carla Evans, a young woman I'd mentored for a decade, sent an email apologizing profusely. She'd overheard Nathan bragging at a bar about milking Walt for all he's worth, and had unwittingly shared my financial details with Sophia, thinking it was for a family project. Carla's remorse was genuine, but the damage was done. She'd been a pawn in their game, another trusted ally turned traitor. The triple betrayal, Sophia's theft, Victor's smear campaign. Carla's mistake felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I paced the kitchen, my bourbon glass sweating in my hand, my thoughts a chaotic dance of pain and fury. I wanted to scream at Ethan for his silence, to confront Sophia for her greed, to expose Victor's lies. But another part of me, the part that still saw Ethan as the boy who'd once looked up to me, begged for a way to fix this, to believe he wasn't lost to me forever. Tom watched me, his eyes steady. "Walt, you're stronger than this," he said, cracking open a beer. "They're playing dirty, but you've got the upper hand. You've got the truth, and you've got us, me, Clara, even Lisa, if you play it right. Don't let these snakes win." His words cut through the fog, reigniting the fire in my chest. I thought of Clara's warmth, Tom's loyalty, the life I'd built despite every obstacle. Sophia's taunts, Victor's threats, Nathan's scams. They thought they could break me, but they'd underestimated the man who'd turned desert sand into gold. I walked to my desk, pulled out a folder of bank statements, and started planning. $300,000 in payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen. They'd taken enough. Tomorrow, I'd cancel every payment, call Lisa to set the record straight, and start building a case that would expose their lies. The desert night stretched out before me, vast and unforgiving, but I was done running. They'd started this war, but I'd finish it. And they'd learn what happens when you betray Walter Grayson. The dawn broke over Scottsdale with a fiery glow, painting the desert sky in hues of vengeance. I sat at my kitchen table, the folder of bank statements spread out like a war map, each page a testament to the empire I'd built and the family that had bled it dry. Clara's warmth and Tom's loyalty had lit a fuse in me last night, but it was the triple betrayal, Sophia's theft, Victor's smear campaign, Carla's unwitting complicity that turned that fuse into a bomb. My heart was a furnace, burning with rage and grief, but also with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just fighting for my pride. I was fighting for the man I'd been before I let Ethan's family reduce me to a shadow. Today, I'd draw first blood. My phone buzzed, shattering the morning quiet. It was a text from Nathan, his words dripping with the kind of street-tough swagger you'd hear in a Scottsdale dive bar. "Yo, Walt, you broke-ass loser," he sneered. "Think you can hide from us? You're a nobody who got lucky, and we're going to make sure this whole town knows it. Keep playing tough, and we'll bury you." The message was a Molotov cocktail, igniting a fresh wave of fury. Nathan wasn't just mocking me. He was doubling down, confident his family's connections would crush me. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with the urge to smash something his smug face, their perfect life, the lies they'd spun. But I wasn't a brawler, I was a strategist, and I'd hit them where it hurt most, their wallet. The first shock came mid-morning. A call from my bank manager, Rachel Nguyen, a no-nonsense woman who'd handled my accounts for a decade. "Walter, we've got a problem," she said, her voice tight. "Sophia tried to access your secondary account another $30,000, flagged for home improvements. I blocked it, but she had a forged power of attorney with your signature." My blood ran cold. Sophia wasn't just stealing. She was escalating, using legal documents to siphon my wealth while painting me as the villain. The betrayal was a sledgehammer, cracking the last vestiges of trust I'd clung to. I'd mentored Rachel when she started at the bank, trusted her with my fortune, and now her loyalty was a lifeline. "Cancel every automatic payment to Ethan's account," I told her, my voice steel. $300,000 over 5 years done, no more. Rachel didn't hesitate. "Consider it stopped, Walter. I've got your back." The act of cutting them off felt like shedding a 1,000-pound weight. For 5 years, I'd funneled money into their Paradise Valley mansion, their kids' private schools, Sophia's designer wardrobe. I'd skipped vacations, sold properties, lived on coffee and cheap sandwiches to keep their dream alive, and they'd repaid me with scorn, theft, and a public smear. The internal struggle was a storm. Part of me screamed to call Ethan, to demand why he'd let this happen, to believe he wasn't part of their schemes. But another part, the part that had built skyscrapers from nothing, knew the truth. Ethan's silence was complicity. The pain was a raw, gaping wound, but it fueled me. I wasn't just stopping payments, I was reclaiming my life. The second shock hit like a lightning bolt. My real estate partner, Mike Donovan, a slick operator who'd always played both sides, sent an email to our biggest clients. Concerns about Walter Grayson's reliability, it read. Recent erratic behavior suggests he's unfit to lead major projects. Attached was a doctored photo of me at a bar, looking disheveled, timestamped the night Evelyn died, a low blow orchestrated by Victor, who'd gotten Mike to betray me for a stake in a Caldwell-backed development deal. The betrayal was a triple stab: Mike's disloyalty, Victor's manipulation, and the desecration of Evelyn's memory. My chest tightened, the grief of losing her mingling with the rage of being betrayed by a man I'd trusted with multi-million-dollar deals. I wanted to drive to Mike's office and smash his desk, but I breathed deep, channeling the fury into focus. They wanted a war? I'd give them one. The third blow came from an unexpected source. My housekeeper, Maria Lopez, a kind woman who'd worked for me for years, knocked on my door, tears in her eyes. "Mr. Grayson, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Sophia offered me money to spy on you, your meetings, your finances." I said no, but she threatened to get me deported. My heart sank. Maria, who'd brought me homemade tamales after Evelyn's funeral, who'd treated my house like her own, had been cornered by Sophia's cruelty. Her loyalty in refusing was a beacon, but the betrayal of Sophia's tactics targeting a vulnerable woman to tighten her grip on my wealth was a new low. The pain was visceral, a reminder of how far they'd go to control me. I hugged Maria, promising her protection. "Your family, Maria," I said. "They can't touch you." My mind was a battlefield, torn between despair and defiance. The weight of their betrayals, Sophia's forgery, Mike's backstabbing. The attack on Maria felt like a noose, but I refused to let it choke me. I thought of Ethan, the boy who'd once run to me with scraped knees, now a man who let his wife's family treat me like garbage. The love I had for him clashed with the reality of his betrayal, each memory a dagger. I'd given up my dreams, retirement in Sedona, a new car, a life free of debt for their sake. And they turned me into a punching bag. The shame was crushing, but Tom's words echoed, "You've got the truth." I did, and I'd use it. As noon approached, my phone rang again. It was Victor, his voice a guttural snarl. "You think you can cut us off, you two-bit hustler?" He spat, pure street venom. "I've got friends in high places, Grayson. You're going to be a nobody by New Year's, scraping pennies while we live large." The threat was a match to gasoline, but I stayed calm. "You're done bleeding me, Victor," I said, my voice ice. "Tell Sophia her free ride's over." I hung up, my pulse racing, and called Lisa Bennett. "I've got a story for you," I told her. "Bank statements, forged documents, the works. The Caldwells are about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong man." I stood, the desert sun streaming through my window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Tom, Clara, Rachel, Maria, they believed in me, not the lies Sophia's family spun. I opened my laptop, pulling up emails, contracts, anything to build my case. $300,000 in payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen. They'd taken my money, my trust, my name. But I was Walter Grayson, and I'd built an empire from nothing. They'd underestimated me, and that was their fatal mistake. The fight had just begun, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. The Scottsdale sun climbed higher, its heat pressing against my windows as I sipped my coffee, the taste bitter against the fire in my chest. Canceling the payments had been my first strike, a declaration of war, but the battle was far from over. Sophia, Victor, Nathan, and their web of betrayals, Mike's client email, Carla's unwitting leak, the forged loan, had turned my life into a battlefield. Each wound fueled my resolve, but the grief of losing Ethan to their poison gnawed at me like a desert wind eroding stone. My heart wrestled with itself. The father who wanted to save his son clashed with the warrior who knew some bridges had to burn. Today, they'd pushed me too far, and I was ready to make them choke on their own arrogance. My phone erupted with a call from Sophia, her name flashing like a warning flare. I answered, bracing for the onslaught. "You sorry ass has been," she spat, her voice pure Scottsdale street venom. The kind you'd hear outside a dive bar at 2 a.m. "Think you can pull the plug on us and walk away? You're a dried-up nobody, Walt, a wannabe tycoon who's too broke to matter. Keep this up, and we'll burn your name to the ground." The words were a Molotov cocktail, each syllable designed to degrade, to remind me I was nothing in her gilded world. My pulse hammered, rage and hurt colliding like a storm. She wasn't just attacking me. She was rewriting my legacy, spitting on the decades I'd spent building a life for Ethan, for her, for the family I'd thought we were. Before I could respond, the first shock hit a text from my old business rival, Derek Vance, a slick developer who'd always resented my success. "Heard you're tanking, Grayson," it read. "Words out, you're dodging debts and screwing over family. My investors are pulling out of your downtown project." My stomach dropped. Derek, who'd once tried to undercut me on a mall deal, had been fed lies by Victor, who'd used his law firm connections to spread rumors of my instability. The betrayal was a triple blow. Victor's manipulation, Derek's opportunism, and the loss of a $20 million project I'd poured my soul into. My mind reeled, picturing the headlines, the whispers at country club brunches, my empire crumbling under their lies. The pain was a raw ache, the kind that made me want to call Ethan to beg him to see the truth. But his silence was an answer, and it cut deeper than any knife. I paced my living room, the walls closing in, my thoughts a chaotic dance of despair and defiance. I'd given them everything: $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen in their latest scam. I'd sacrificed my retirement, my health, my peace, all for a son who let his wife's family treat me like a punching bag. The shame was a lead weight, but it was the love for Ethan that hurt most. The memories of teaching him to ride a bike, of his laughter at Evelyn's campfire stories. How had it come to this? How had I become the enemy in my own son's story? The internal struggle was torture, a war between the father who wanted to save him and the man who refused to be broken. The doorbell rang, sharp and urgent. It was Rosa Delgado, my longtime office manager, her face a mask of worry. "Walt, I just heard from a friend at the Tribune," she said, her voice trembling. "Sophia's pushing a story that you're laundering money through your properties." I told them it's nonsense, but they're digging. Rosa, who'd stayed late countless nights to balance my books, who'd brought her kids to my office Christmas parties, was a rock of loyalty. Her faith in me was a lifeline, but the betrayal was a fresh wound. Sophia wasn't just stealing my money. She was weaponizing my reputation, trying to paint me as a criminal to protect her lavish lifestyle. I hugged Rosa, her loyalty a stark contrast to the vipers circling me. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "You're one of the good ones." The second shock came like a thunderclap. An email from my charity board colleague, Ellen Hayes, a neutral party who'd always admired my philanthropy. "Walter, I'm devastated," she wrote. "Victor sent us documents claiming you've been siphoning charity funds for personal use. We're launching an audit." My heart stopped. Victor had fabricated evidence, using forged receipts to accuse me of stealing from the children's hospital I'd funded for years. The betrayal was a triple gut punch. Victor's lies, Ellen's forced suspicion, and the desecration of my charity work, the one thing that had kept me grounded since Evelyn's death. My hands shook as I read the email again. The pain of being branded a thief mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd lifted up. I wanted to scream, to drive to Victor's office and confront him, but I knew better. This was chess, not a bar fight. The third blow was the cruelest. My neighbor, Pete Larson, a retired cop who'd always been friendly, knocked on my door, his face grim. "Walt, I hate to tell you this," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "Nathan paid me to plant a story with my old precinct contacts saying you're involved in shady real estate deals. I turned him down, but he's got others spreading it." My chest tightened, the air sucked out of the room. Pete, who'd shared beers with me on my porch, who'd saluted my community work, had been targeted by Nathan's dirty tactics. His refusal was a flicker of hope, but the betrayal of Nathan's attempt to smear me as a crook while I'd funded his sister's lifestyle was a dagger. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my heart. I'd built a legacy of integrity, and they were tearing it apart piece by piece. My mind was a maelstrom, rage and grief, colliding like desert storms. I thought of Ethan, his silence louder than any insult, letting his wife's family destroy me. The love I had for him was a chain, binding me to a hope that he'd see the truth. But the reality was a brick wall. He'd chosen them over me. The shame of being reduced to a caricature. A washed-up nobody, as Sophia called me, was crushing. But Rosa's loyalty, Pete's honesty, and Tom's words from last night, "You've got the truth," lit a fire. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel. Freeze every account linked to Sophia or Ethan, I said. And get me every transaction, record 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen. I want it all. Rachel's voice was steady. On it, Walter. They're done messing with you. I stood, the desert sun blazing through my window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Sophia's taunts, Victor's lies, Nathan's schemes, they thought they could bury me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who'd turned sand into skyscrapers. I opened my laptop, pulling up Lisa's number. We're going public, I told her. Every lie, every dollar, every betrayal. The Caldwells are about to learn what happens when you cross the wrong man. The war was escalating, and I'd make sure they felt the heat. The desert afternoon shimmered outside my Scottsdale home, the sun, a relentless witness to the war brewing inside me. I leaned back in my recliner. The weight of Sophia's venomous call, Derek's investor betrayal, Ellen's charity audit, and Pete's revelation about Nathan's smear campaign still clawing at my heart. Freezing their accounts was my opening salvo, but it wasn't enough. The Caldwells had turned my life into a circus of lies, and Ethan's silence was the loudest betrayal of all. My soul was a battlefield, torn between the father who still saw his son's boyish grin and the warrior ready to burn their world to ash. Today, they'd pushed me beyond reason, and I'd make them pay with a move so bold it'd leave them reeling. My phone buzzed, a text from Victor, his words dripping with the raw, street-tough swagger of a Scottsdale hustler. You gutless old fool, he snarled. Think you can stiff us and walk? You're a washed-up nobody, Grayson, a has-been landlord who'll be begging for scraps when we're done. Try me, and I'll make sure you're blacklisted from every deal in Arizona. The threat was a grenade, each word a shard of glass cutting into my pride. My hands shook, rage and grief, colliding like a desert storm. Victor wasn't just attacking my wallet, he was gunning for my legacy, using his law firm clout to paint me as a failure. The pain was a living thing, a beast gnawing at the love I'd held for Ethan, who'd let this snake dictate my worth. The first shock hit like a sucker punch. A call from my old friend, Javier Morales, a retired city councilman who'd backed my early projects. Walt, I just got a tip, he said, his voice heavy with concern. Sophia's been meeting with a private investigator, digging into your past deals, claiming you bribed officials to get permits. She's shopping it to the DA's office. My blood ran cold. Sophia wasn't just stealing my money. She was trying to frame me as a criminal, risking jail time to protect her gilded life. Javier's loyalty was a beacon he'd refused to help her, citing our decades of trust, but the betrayal was a triple wound. Sophia's scheming, the investigator's complicity, and the threat to my freedom. My mind spun, picturing handcuffs, headlines, my empire reduced to a mugshot. The urge to call Ethan, to demand if he knew, was overwhelming, but his silence screamed louder than any answer. I paced my living room, the desert heat seeping through the walls, my thoughts a chaotic swirl of despair and defiance. I'd poured my soul into their lives, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen in their scams. I'd given up my dreams of a quiet retirement, my health, my dignity, all for a son who let his wife's family treat me like dirt. The shame was a crushing weight, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a hope that he'd stand up, that he'd choose me. But the truth was a brick wall. He hadn't. The internal struggle was agony, a war between the father who wanted to save his son and the man who refused to be destroyed. I wanted to scream, to tear down their Paradise Valley mansion with my bare hands, but I knew better. This was a chess game, and I was about to checkmate. The second shock came like a lightning strike. An email from my golf buddy, Sarah Coleman, a neutral real estate broker who'd always been fair. Walter, I'm horrified, she wrote. Nathan leaked a fake contract to my firm, claiming you defaulted on a deal with us, costing investors millions. He's pushing for a lawsuit. My heart stopped. Nathan had fabricated a document, using my name to smear me as a fraud, threatening my business with litigation. The betrayal was a triple stab. Nathan's lies, Sarah's forced involvement, and the attack on my reputation as an honest developer. My chest tightened, the pain of being branded a cheat, mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Nathan, to smash his smug grin, but I breathed deep, channeling the fury into strategy. They wanted to play dirty? I'd play dirtier. The third blow was the cruelest. A knock at my door revealed my cousin, Luis Alvarez, a quiet mechanic who'd always looked up to me. His eyes were red, his voice shaking. Walt, Sophia called me last night, he said. She offered me $10,000 to plant drugs in your truck, to set you up for a bust. I told her to go to hell, but she said she'd ruin my shop if I didn't. My stomach churned. Luis, who'd fixed my car for free when I was broke, who'd called me primo with pride, had been targeted by Sophia's ruthlessness. His refusal was a flicker of hope, but the betrayal Sophia's attempt to frame me as a drug dealer, risking my life and freedom, was a dagger to the heart. The pain was visceral, a reminder of how far they'd go to destroy me. I hugged Luis, my voice thick. Your family, Luis. They can't touch us. My mind was a vortex, rage and grief colliding like thunderheads. Ethan's silence was a betrayal, louder than Sophia's taunts, Victor's threats, or Nathan's schemes. The love I had for him was a wound that wouldn't heal. Each memory of his childhood, a little league game, a camping trip with Evelyn, a fresh cut. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like trash. The shame was a lead weight, but Javier's loyalty, Sarah's honesty, and Luis's courage lit a fire. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. I've got more, I said. Fake contracts, PI reports, threats to my family. Get ready to blow this wide open. Her voice was steady. I'm with you, Walt. Let's bury them. I stood, the desert sun blazing through my window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Sophia's frame-up, Nathan's lawsuit, Victor's smears. They thought they could break me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who'd turned dust into gold. I opened my laptop, pulling up every document. 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and now their latest crimes. I'd planned to skip Victor's airport pickup, to let them stew in their own arrogance. But now I saw a bigger move. I'd let them think they'd won, let them board that plane, then hit them with a public expose that'd make their heads spin. The war was on, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. The Scottsdale dusk settled over my home like a shroud, the desert air thick with the promise of a reckoning. My decision to skip Victor and Elaine's airport pickup was a calculated move, a silent middle finger to their arrogance. But the fire in my chest burned hotter with every new betrayal. Sophia's frame-up, Nathan's fake lawsuit, the attack on Luis, Javier, Sarah, and Pete's loyalty had anchored me. But Ethan's silence was a wound that bled fresh with every thought. My heart was a fractured thing, torn between the father who still dreamed of his son's redemption and the warrior ready to tear down the Caldwell's house of lies. Tonight, they'd come for me, and I was ready to face them head on. My phone lit up with a voicemail from Elaine, her voice a venomous hiss that could have come straight from a Scottsdale alley brawl. You spineless, low-rent chump, she sneered, her words dripping with street-sharp contempt. You ditch us at the airport like some deadbeat coward? You're a broke-ass nobody, Walt. A has-been who thinks he's hot shit. Keep playing these games, and we'll make sure you're scraping gum off sidewalks for a living. The insult was a flamethrower, scorching my pride. Elaine wasn't just mocking me. She was orchestrating my erasure, confident her family's social clout would bury me. My hands clenched, rage and grief colliding like a monsoon. The pain of being cast out by my own son's in-laws after bankrolling their lives was a knife twisting deeper with every word. The first shock came like a gunshot. A knock at my door revealed my old business mentor, Ray Callahan, a grizzled real estate legend who'd taught me the ropes 30 years ago. His face was grim as he stepped inside. Walt, I got a call from Victor, he said, his voice heavy. He's spreading word to the Chamber of Commerce that you're cooking your books, hiding assets to dodge taxes. They're pushing to revoke your business license. My stomach plummeted. Victor had weaponized my mentor against me, using his influence to threaten my livelihood. Ray's loyalty shone through. He'd refused to endorse the lies, but the betrayal was a triple blow. Victor's slander, the Chamber's suspicion, and the violation of my mentor's trust. My mind spun, picturing my company's name dragged through the mud, my legacy reduced to a scandal. The urge to call Ethan, to beg for a shred of loyalty, was a scream in my chest. But his absence was a deafening answer. I paced my living room, the desert twilight casting long shadows, my thoughts a chaotic storm of despair and defiance. I'd poured my life into their world, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their kids' futures. I'd skipped heart checkups, sold my vacation home, lived on instant coffee to keep their mansion lit. The shame of being branded a crook was crushing, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd stand up for me. The internal struggle was a crucible, melting my heart into something raw and jagged. How had I let them reduce me to this? How had I become the villain in a story I'd written with my own blood? I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he saw the truth. But I knew better. This was a war, and I'd fight it with precision. The second shock hit like a thunderbolt. My phone buzzed with an email from my lawyer, Greg Harper, the loyal ally who'd frozen Sophia's forged loan. "Walter, emergency," it read. "Nathan's been contacting your tenants, claiming you're evicting them for illegal renovations. He's got a fake lease addendum with your signature." My heart stopped. Nathan had escalated, spreading lies to my renters, risking my property's stability and my reputation as a fair landlord. The betrayal was a triple stab: Nathan's forgery, the tenant's panic, and the attack on my integrity as a property owner. My chest tightened, the pain of being painted as a slumlord mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Nathan, to smash his lies into pieces, but I channeled the fury into strategy. They thought they could outmaneuver me. I'd show them how a real player moved. The third blow was the cruelest. My childhood friend, Teresa Vega, a schoolteacher who'd known me since we were kids, called in tears. "Walt, Sophia came to my school," she sobbed. "She told my principal I was spreading rumors about her family, using your name to stir trouble. They're threatening to suspend me." My blood ran cold. Sophia had targeted Teresa, a woman who'd sent me care packages during Evelyn's illness, who'd called me hermano with love. Her loyalty was unshakable. She'd stood up to Sophia, but the betrayal was a dagger. Sophia's vindictiveness, the principal's doubt, and the attack on Teresa's career. The pain was a tidal wave, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to destroy me and those I loved. I reassured Teresa, promising to fight for her. "Your family," I said, my voice breaking. "They can't break us." My mind was a maelstrom, rage and grief colliding like desert winds. Ethan's silence was a betrayal louder than Elaine's insults, Victor's slanders, or Nathan's forgeries. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory, his first steps, his graduation, the way he'd clung to me after Evelyn's funeral. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like garbage. The shame was a crushing weight. But Ray's loyalty, Greg's vigilance, and Teresa's courage were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. "Add this to the story," I said, my voice steel. "Victor's chamber plot, Nathan's tenant lies, Sophia's attack on my friend. I want every dirty move exposed." Lisa's voice was firm. "We'll nail them, Walt. Keep the evidence coming." I stood, the desert night cloaking my home, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Elaine's taunts, Victor's schemes, Nathan's lies, they thought they could crush me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who'd turned sand into skyscrapers. I opened my laptop, compiling every document: 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and now their latest attacks. The airport snub was just the beginning. I'd let them think they'd won, let them stew in their fury, then hit them with a public reckoning that'd shake their world. The war was escalating, and I'd make sure they felt the full weight of my wrath. The Scottsdale night wrapped my home in a suffocating embrace, the desert stars mocking me with their cold indifference. The airport gambit had left Victor and Elaine stranded, a small victory in a war that was escalating with every passing hour. Their relentless attacks Sophia's frame-up, Nathan's fake lawsuit, the assault on Teresa's career had turned my life into a battlefield littered with betrayal. Ray, Greg, and Teresa's loyalty kept me grounded, but Ethan's silence was a wound that festered, a constant reminder of the son I'd lost to the Caldwell's poison. My heart was a storm of grief and fury, torn between the father, who longed to reclaim his boy, and the warrior ready to dismantle their empire of lies. Today, their war went public, and I was about to face the full force of their venom. My phone buzzed with a notification from the Scottsdale Tribune's website, and my blood ran cold. The headline screamed, "Local tycoon Walter Grayson, accused of fraud, abandons family in crisis." The article, penned by a reporter named Vanessa Reed, painted me as a reckless mogul who dodged taxes, defrauded investors, and left Victor and Elaine stranded at the airport during a dangerous desert storm. No storm had hit Scottsdale. It was a clear 60 degrees, but the lies were a sledgehammer, crafted by Victor's connections to smear my name. The betrayal was a triple blow: Vanessa's complicity, Victor's orchestration, and the public crucifixion of my reputation. My chest tightened, the pain of being branded a villain searing through me. I wanted to call Ethan, to scream for him to defend me, but his absence was a deafening betrayal, cutting deeper than any headline. The first shock came like a knife to the gut. A text from my longtime client, Anita Brooks, a wealthy hotelier who'd trusted me with her portfolio. "Walter, I'm pulling my investments," it read. "The Tribune stories got my board spooked. They think you're a liability." My stomach churned. Anita, who'd toasted my success at charity galas, had been swayed by Victor's lies, fed through his law firm's network to her boardroom. The betrayal was a triple stab. Anita's defection, Victor's manipulation, and the loss of a $50 million partnership. My mind reeled, picturing my empire crumbling. My name whispered as a cautionary tale at Scottsdale's country clubs. The grief was a tidal wave, drowning the love I'd held for Ethan, who'd let his wife's family orchestrate this destruction. I wanted to beg him to stand up, to fight for me, but his silence was a brick wall, and I was alone in the rubble. I paced my living room, the desert darkness pressing against the windows, my thoughts a chaotic swirl of despair and defiance. I'd poured my soul into their lives, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their gilded world. I'd skipped my own dreams, a cabin in Flagstaff, a new heart monitor, a life free of debt to keep their mansion shining. The shame of being painted as a fraud was crushing. But the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd see the truth. The internal struggle was a furnace, burning away the man who'd once believed in family above all. How had I become the enemy in a story I'd funded with my own blood? I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he woke up, but I knew better. This was war, and I'd fight it with strategy, not fists. The second shock hit like a thunderclap. A call from my neighbor, Carlos Mendez, a loyal contractor who'd worked on my projects for years. "Walt, I just saw a post on Nextdoor," he said, his voice trembling. "Nathan's claiming you're running a Ponzi scheme, scamming your tenants. He's got people calling for a boycott of your properties." My heart stopped. Nathan had weaponized social media, spreading lies to my community, threatening my rental income and my reputation as a fair landlord. The betrayal was a triple wound. Nathan's slander, the neighbor's gullibility, and the attack on my legacy as a community builder. My chest tightened, the pain of being branded a crook mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Nathan, to tear his lies apart, but I channeled the fury into focus. They thought they could ruin me. I'd turn their game against them. The third blow was the cruelest. My sister, Elena Rivera, a retired librarian who'd always been my confidant, showed up at my door, her face pale. "Walt," Sophia called my book club, she said, tears in her eyes. "She told them I'm a liar, that I've been spreading gossip about her family to hurt you. They're kicking me out of the club." My blood ran cold. Sophia had targeted Elena, a woman who'd read bedtime stories to Ethan, who'd held my hand at Evelyn's funeral. Her loyalty was unshakable. She'd defended me to her club, but the betrayal was a dagger. Sophia's vindictiveness, the club's betrayal, and the attack on Elena's community. The pain was a tsunami, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to isolate me. I hugged Elena, my voice breaking. "You're my family," I said. "They can't take that." My mind was a vortex, rage and grief, colliding like desert storms. Ethan's silence was a betrayal louder than Elaine's insults, Victor's smears, or Nathan's social media lies. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory. His first business pitch, his wedding vows, the way he'd promised to make me proud. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like trash. The shame was a lead weight, but Carlos's loyalty, Elena's courage, and Lisa's promise to expose the truth were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. "The Tribune story's just the start," I said, my voice steel. "Nathan's next-door lies, Sophia's attack on my sister, Victor's investor sabotage added all to the expose." Lisa's voice was resolute. "We'll bury them, Walt. Keep the evidence coming." I stood, the desert night cloaking my home, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Elaine's taunts, Victor's schemes, Nathan's lies, they thought they could destroy me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who'd turned sand into skyscrapers. I opened my laptop, compiling every document, 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and now their latest attacks. The Tribune article was their declaration of war, but I'd turn it into their downfall. I'd let them think they'd won, let their smugness blind them, then hit them with a truth so explosive it'd shatter their world. The war was on, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. The Scottsdale dawn broke with a crimson fury, mirroring the storm raging inside me as I sat at my desk, the Tribune article still burning in my mind like a brand. Vanessa's smear, Anita's defection, Carlos's warning about Nathan's next-door lies, and Sophia's attack on Elena had turned my world into a war zone. The loyalty of Ray, Greg, Teresa, and Lisa was my anchor, but Ethan's silence was a wound that bled deeper with every passing hour. My heart was a fractured mosaic, torn between the father who clung to memories of his son's laughter and the strategist ready to dismantle the Caldwell's empire of deceit. The Tribune's lies were their opening salvo, but I was building an arsenal of truth, and today I'd turn their battlefield into my war room. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Nathan. His voice, a guttural snarl that could have come from a Scottsdale street fight. "You washed-up, penny-pinching loser," he spat, each word dripping with raw contempt. "Think you can dodge us and play hero? You're a nobody, Walt. A has-been landlord who'll be selling hot dogs on the corner when we're done. Keep pushing, and we'll make sure you're radioactive in this town." The insult was a Molotov cocktail, igniting a blaze of rage that threatened to consume me. Nathan wasn't just mocking me. He was vowing to erase my legacy, confident his family's connections would bury me alive. My hands trembled, grief and fury colliding like a desert tempest. The pain of being cast out by my son's in-laws, after funding their lives, was a blade twisting in my chest, cutting deeper with every venomous word. The first shock hit like a freight train. A call from my old college friend, Marcus Tate, a respected accountant who'd helped me navigate my early deals. "Walt, I just got a tip from a buddy at the IRS," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Victor's been feeding them fake documents, claiming you've been funneling money offshore to evade taxes. They're opening an investigation." My blood ran cold. Victor had escalated, risking federal scrutiny to paint me as a tax cheat, threatening my freedom and my empire. Marcus's loyalty was a lifeline. He'd already contacted a lawyer to counter the claims, but the betrayal was a triple wound. Victor's lies, the IRS's suspicion, and the violation of my integrity. My mind spun, picturing audits, courtrooms, my name dragged through the mud. The urge to call Ethan, to demand if he knew about this, was a scream in my throat, but his silence was a deafening betrayal, sharper than any accusation. I paced my study, the desert sun casting harsh shadows across my desk. My thoughts, a chaotic swirl of despair and defiance. I'd given them everything, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their lavish world. I'd skipped my own dreams, a quiet life with Evelyn, a new heart monitor, a chance to breathe to keep their mansion gleaming. The shame of being branded a criminal was crushing, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd stand up for me. The internal struggle was a crucible, forging my heart into something raw and jagged. How had I become the villain in a story I'd funded with my own blood? I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he saw the truth. But I knew better. This was a war, and I'd fight it with precision, not desperation. The second shock came like a lightning bolt. An email from my former tenant, Laura Bennett, a neutral small business owner who'd rented one of my properties. "Walter, I'm stunned," she wrote. "Sophia's been telling my customers you're raising rents to force us out, claiming you're gentrifying the neighborhood for profit. They're organizing a protest." My heart stopped. Sophia had weaponized my tenants, spreading lies to incite a public backlash, threatening my rental income and my reputation as a fair landlord. The betrayal was a triple stab: Sophia's slander, the tenants' anger, and the attack on my legacy as a community builder. My chest tightened, the pain of being painted as a greedy tycoon mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Sophia, to tear her lies apart, but I channeled the fury into strategy. They thought they could ruin me? I'd turn their lies into my weapon. The third blow was the cruelest. My nephew, Diego Flores, a young chef who'd worked at my charity events, showed up at my door, his face ashen. "Tio Walt, Nathan came to my restaurant," he said, his voice breaking. "He threatened to tank my business with fake health violations unless I spread rumors about you skimming charity funds. I told him to shove it, but he's already got inspectors sniffing around." My stomach churned. Diego, who'd cooked for my fundraisers, who'd called me his hero, had been targeted by Nathan's ruthlessness. His loyalty was a beacon. He'd stood up to Nathan, but the betrayal was a dagger. Nathan's threats, the inspector's scrutiny, and the attack on Diego's livelihood. The pain was a tsunami, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to destroy me and those I loved. I hugged Diego, my voice thick. "Your family," I said. "They can't break us." "One from." My mind was a vortex, rage and grief, colliding like desert storms. Ethan's silence was a betrayal louder than Nathan's threats, Victor's IRS plot, or Sophia's tenant lies. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory, his first job, his dreams of success, the way he'd promised to honor Evelyn's memory. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like garbage. The shame was a lead weight, but Marcus's loyalty, Laura's honesty, and Diego's courage were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. "Add this to the story," I said, my voice steel. "Victor's IRS scheme, Sophia's tenant protests, Nathan's attack on my nephew. I want every lie exposed." Lisa's voice was resolute. "We've got a bombshell, Walt. Keep the evidence coming." I stood, the desert sun blazing through my window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Nathan's taunts, Victor's schemes, Sophia's lies, they thought they could crush me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who'd turned sand into skyscrapers. I opened my laptop, compiling every document, 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and now their latest attacks. The Tribune article was their sword, but I'd forge it into my shield. I'd let them think they'd won, let their arrogance blind them, then hit them with a truth so explosive it'd shatter their world. The war was on, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. The Scottsdale morning burned with a relentless heat, the desert sun, a mirror to the fire raging in my chest as I sat in my study, surrounded by folders of evidence, bank statements, forged documents, and screenshots of Nathan's lies. The Tribune's smear, Anita's defection, Sophia's tenant protests, and Nathan's attack on Diego had turned my life into a war zone, each betrayal a landmine exploding beneath me. Marcus, Laura, and Diego's loyalty were my anchors, but Ethan's silence was a wound that bled deeper with every breath. My heart was a shattered battlefield, torn between the father who clung to fading memories of his son and the warrior ready to obliterate the Caldwell's empire of deceit. Today, I'd forge my pain into a weapon, crafting a battle plan to expose their lies and reclaim my name. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, her words dripping with the raw, street-tough venom of a Scottsdale bar brawl. "You pathetic, dried-up fool," she sneered. "Think you can outsmart us? You're a nobody, Walt. A broke-ass landlord who'll be cleaning gutters when we're done. Keep playing tough, and we'll make sure you're a laughingstock from here to Phoenix." The insult was a flamethrower, scorching my pride with every syllable. Sophia wasn't just attacking me, she was vowing to erase my legacy, confident her family's connections would crush me. My hands shook, rage and grief colliding like a desert monsoon. The pain of being cast out by my son's wife, after funding their lives, was a blade twisting in my gut, each word a fresh cut against the love I'd held for Ethan. The first shock hit like a grenade. A call from my old business partner, Sheila Monroe, a no-nonsense developer who'd stood by me through tough deals. "Walt, I just got a heads up," she said, her voice tense. "Victor's been pitching to the city council, claiming you've been bribing zoning officials to fast-track your projects. They're calling for a public hearing." My blood ran cold. Victor had escalated, risking my business's foundation by accusing me of corruption, threatening my contracts and my reputation. Sheila's loyalty was a lifeline. She'd already rallied allies to counter the claims, but the betrayal was a triple wound. Victor's slander, the council's suspicion, and the violation of my integrity. My mind spun, picturing public hearings, my name dragged through the mud, my empire reduced to a scandal. The urge to call Ethan, to demand if he was part of this, was a scream in my chest, but his silence was a deafening betrayal, sharper than any accusation. I paced my study, the desert sun casting harsh shadows across my desk, my thoughts a chaotic storm of despair and defiance. I'd poured my life into their world, $300,000 in mortgage payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their gilded lifestyle. I'd skipped my own dreams, a quiet retirement, a new heart monitor, a life free of debt to keep their mansion shining. The shame of being branded a corrupt mogul was crushing, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd stand up for me. The internal struggle was a crucible, forging my heart into something raw and jagged. How would I become the villain in a story I'd funded with my own blood? I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he saw the truth. But I knew better. This was a war, and I'd fight it with precision, not desperation. The second shock came like a lightning bolt. An email from my charity event planner, Karen Walsh, a neutral party who'd organized my fundraisers. "Walter, I'm horrified," she wrote. "Nathan's been telling donors you've been skimming funds from our veterans charity using fake invoices. They're threatening to pull their pledges." My heart stopped. Nathan had weaponized my philanthropy, spreading lies to donors who'd trusted me, risking the programs I'd built in Evelyn's memory. The betrayal was a triple stab: Nathan's slander, the donor's doubt, and the attack on my legacy as a giver. My chest tightened, the pain of being painted as a thief mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Nathan, to tear his lies apart, but I channeled the fury into strategy. They thought they could ruin me? I'd turn their lies into my weapon. The third blow was the cruelest. My old high school coach, Frank Torres, a mentor who'd shaped my work ethic, showed up at my door, his face etched with pain. "Walt, Sophia called my community center," he said, his voice breaking. "She told them I'm helping you hide assets, dragging my name into your mess. They're threatening to fire me." My stomach churned. Frank, who'd coached me through my toughest years, who'd called me his star player, had been targeted by Sophia's ruthlessness. His loyalty was unshakable. He'd stood up to her, but the betrayal was a dagger. Sophia's lies, the center's suspicion, and the attack on Frank's livelihood. The pain was a tsunami, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to isolate me. I hugged Frank, my voice thick. "Your family," I said. "They can't break us." My mind was a vortex, rage and grief, colliding like desert storms. Ethan's silence was a betrayal, louder than Sophia's taunts, Victor's counsel plot, or Nathan's donor lies. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory: his first real estate pitch, his promises to make me proud, the way he'd hugged me at Evelyn's grave. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like garbage. The shame was a lead weight, but Sheila's loyalty, Karen's honesty, and Frank's courage were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. "Add this to the exposé," I said, my voice steel. "Victor's counsel scheme, Nathan's donor lies, Sophia's attack on my coach. I want every lie laid bare." Lisa's voice was resolute. "This is dynamite, Walt. We'll make them regret it." I stood, the desert sun blazing through my window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a stone in my chest, but it was fuel now. Sophia's taunts, Victor's schemes, Nathan's lies, they thought they could crush me, but they'd forgotten who I was. I was Walter Grayson, the man who turned sand into skyscrapers. I opened my laptop, compiling every document: 300,000 in payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and now their latest attacks. The Tribune article was their weapon, but I'd turn it into my shield. I'd let them think they'd won, let their arrogance blind them, then hit them with a truth so explosive it'd shatter their world. Christmas Eve was coming, and I'd crash their perfect dinner with a reckoning they'd never forget. The war was on, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. The Scottsdale night was ablaze with holiday lights, but inside my study, the glow of my laptop screen cast a colder fire. Christmas Eve had arrived, and my war room was ready, folders stuffed with evidence of the Caldwell's treachery. Victor's IRS plot, Nathan's donor lies, Sophia's attack on Frank. Sheila, Karen, and Frank's loyalty had fortified me, but Ethan's silence was a wound that bled with every heartbeat, a reminder of the son I'd lost to their venom. My heart was a shattered crucible, torn between the father who dreamed of Ethan's redemption and the warrior poised to burn their world to ash. Tonight, I'd storm their gilded Christmas dinner, armed with the truth, and make them choke on their lies. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Victor, his voice a guttural snarl straight out of a Scottsdale street fight. "You washed up, gutless chump," he growled, each word dripping with raw contempt. "Think you can play games with us? You're a broke-ass nobody, Walt, a has-been who'll be scraping dog shit off sidewalks when we're done. Show up tonight, and we'll make sure you're laughed out of Arizona." The threat was a flamethrower, scorching my pride. Victor wasn't just attacking me. He was vowing to erase my legacy, confident his law firm's clout would bury me. My hands shook, rage and grief colliding like a desert tempest. The pain of being cast out by my son's in-laws, after bankrolling their lives, was a blade twisting in my chest, each word a fresh wound against the love I'd held for Ethan. The first shock hit like a cannon blast. A call from my old friend, Monica Reyes, a respected philanthropist who'd co-chaired my charity events. "Walt, I just got a tip," she said, her voice trembling. "Sophia's been telling our donors, you've been using charity funds to pay off personal debts. They're threatening to sue the foundation." My blood ran cold. Sophia had escalated, risking my charity's existence to paint me as a thief, threatening the causes I'd built in Evelyn's memory. Monica's loyalty was a lifeline. She'd already rallied donors to verify my records, but the betrayal was a triple wound. Sophia's lies, the donor's suspicion, and the violation of my philanthropy. My mind spun, picturing lawsuits, my name smeared across charity circles, my legacy reduced to a scandal. The urge to call Ethan, to demand if he knew, was a scream in my throat, but his silence was a deafening betrayal, sharper than any accusation. I paced my study, the desert night pressing against the windows, my thoughts a chaotic swirl of despair and defiance. I'd poured my soul into their world, $300,000 in mortgage payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their gilded lifestyle. I'd skipped my own dreams, a quiet life with Evelyn, a new heart monitor, a chance to breathe, to keep their mansion gleaming. The shame of being branded a fraud was crushing, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd stand up for me. The internal struggle was a furnace, forging my heart into something raw and jagged. How had I become the villain in a story I'd funded with my own blood? I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he saw the truth, but I knew better. This was a war, and I'd fight it with precision, not desperation. The second shock came like a lightning bolt. An email from my business associate, Tom Wynn, a neutral contractor who'd built my properties. "Walter, I'm stunned," he wrote. "Nathan's been telling my suppliers you're bankrupt, claiming you've been dodging payments to fund your lavish lifestyle. They're cutting us off." My heart stopped. Nathan had weaponized my supply chain, spreading lies to cripple my projects, threatening my business's foundation. The betrayal was a triple stab. Nathan's slander, the supplier's doubt, and the attack on my reputation as an honest developer. My chest tightened, the pain of being painted as a deadbeat mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. I wanted to confront Nathan, to tear his lies apart, but I channeled the fury into strategy. They thought they could ruin me? I'd turn their lies into my weapon. The third blow was the cruelest. My niece, Carla Gomez, a young artist who'd painted murals for my properties, showed up at my door, tears streaming down her face. "Tio Walt, Sophia came to my gallery," she sobbed. She told my curator, "I'm helping you launder money through my art sales. They're threatening to cancel my show." My stomach churned. Carla, who'd dedicated her first exhibit to Evelyn, who'd called me her inspiration, had been targeted by Sophia's ruthlessness. Her loyalty was unshakable. She'd stood up to Sophia, but the betrayal was a dagger. Sophia's lies, the curator's suspicion, and the attack on Carla's career. The pain was a tsunami, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to destroy me and those I loved. I hugged Carla, my voice breaking. "Your family," I said. "They can't break us." My mind was a vortex, rage and grief colliding like desert storms. Ethan's silence was a betrayal louder than Victor's threats, Sophia's donor lies, or Nathan's supplier sabotage. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory, his first business deal, his vows to honor Evelyn, the way he'd promised to make me proud. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like garbage. The shame was a lead weight, but Monica's loyalty, Tom's honesty, and Carla's courage were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my briefcase, packed with evidence, $300,000 in payments, $100,000 in loans, $30,000 stolen, and now their latest attacks. I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Evelyn's funeral, and drove to their Paradise Valley mansion, the glow of their Christmas lights mocking my sacrifice. I walked into their dining room, the air thick with laughter and clinking glasses, 15 faces turning to me with shock. Sophia froze, her wine glass trembling. "You've got some nerve, you broke, ass loser," she hissed, her voice pure street venom. I set my briefcase on their marble sideboard, my voice calm but lethal. "Good evening, everyone. I'm here to share the truth about who funded this dinner, this house, this life." I handed out packets, bank statements, forged documents, screenshots of their lies. The room went silent as guests read, their faces shifting from curiosity to horror. $300,000 in mortgage payments, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen. And this is how they repay me. The Caldwell's facade crumbled, and I walked out, their gasps and accusations ringing like Christmas bells. The war was on, and I'd struck the first blow. The Scottsdale dawn broke with a soft golden hue, a stark contrast to the storm still raging in my chest. The Christmas Eve showdown had left the Caldwell's perfect facade in ruins. Their guests' shocked faces seared into my memory as I exposed their lies. $300,000 in mortgage payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen. Monica, Tom, and Carla's loyalty had been my shield. But Ethan's silence was a wound that bled with every heartbeat, a reminder of the son I'd lost to their venom. My heart was a shattered crucible, torn between the father who clung to fading hopes of reconciliation and the warrior who'd just drawn blood. Their empire of deceit was crumbling, but the war wasn't over. Today, they'd come for me, and I'd deliver a final blow to end it all. My phone erupted with a voicemail from Elaine, her voice, a vicious snarl straight out of a Scottsdale street brawl. "You miserable, broke-ass fool," she spat, each word dripping with raw contempt. "Think you can humiliate us and walk? You're a nobody, Walt, a washed-up landlord who'll be sweeping streets when we're done. Keep this up, and we'll make sure you're a pariah in every corner of Arizona." The insult was a flamethrower, torching my pride. Elaine wasn't just attacking me. She was vowing to erase my legacy, confident her family's connections would bury me. My hands shook, rage and grief colliding like a desert monsoon. The pain of being cast out by my son's in-laws after funding their lives was a blade twisting in my gut, each word a fresh wound against the love I'd held for Ethan. The first shock hit like a bombshell. A call from my old friend, Julia Martinez, a respected judge who'd known me since my early days. "Walt, I just got wind of something sickening," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "Victor's been lobbying my colleagues, claiming you've been bribing judges to sway property disputes. They're pushing for a criminal probe." My blood ran cold. Victor had escalated, risking my freedom by accusing me of judicial corruption, threatening my life's work. Julia's loyalty was a lifeline. She'd already alerted the court to verify my record, but the betrayal was a triple wound. Victor's lies, the judge's suspicion, and the violation of my integrity. My mind spun, picturing courtrooms, handcuffs, my name smeared as a crook. The urge to call Ethan, to demand if he knew, was a scream in my throat, but his silence was a deafening betrayal, sharper than any accusation. This wasn't just about money. It was about destroying my knowledge of justice, my education in fairness, and the lessons I'd learned building an empire. I paced my living room, the desert sun casting long shadows, my thoughts a chaotic storm of despair and defiance. I'd poured my soul into their world, $300,000 in mortgage payments, 100,000 in loans, 30,000 stolen, and countless sacrifices for their gilded lifestyle. I'd skipped my own dreams, a quiet life with Evelyn, a new heart monitor, a chance to breathe to keep their mansion gleaming. The shame of being branded a criminal was crushing, but the love for Ethan was a chain, binding me to a fading hope that he'd stand up for me. The internal struggle was a furnace, forging my heart into something raw and jagged. How would I become the villain in a story I'd funded with my own blood? The knowledge of their betrayal, the lessons of their greed, and the education in their ruthlessness burned deep. I wanted to drive to their house, to shake Ethan until he saw the truth. But I knew better. This was a war, and I'd fight it with the knowledge I'd gained from years of resilience. The second shock came like a thunderclap. An email from my former colleague, Daniel Kim, a neutral architect who designed my properties. "Walter, I'm gutted," he wrote. "Nathan's been telling my clients you've been using substandard materials in your buildings, claiming safety violations. They're demanding inspections." My heart stopped. Nathan had weaponized my reputation, spreading lies to cripple my projects, threatening my business's foundation. The betrayal was a triple stab. Nathan's slander, the client's doubt, and the attack on my legacy as a quality builder. My chest tightened, the pain of being painted as a negligent developer mingling with the rage of being betrayed by those I'd bankrolled. The knowledge of their deceit, the lessons of their malice, and the education in their cruelty fueled my resolve. I wanted to confront Nathan, to tear his lies apart, but I channeled the fury into strategy. They thought they could ruin me? I'd turn their lies into my weapon. The third blow was the cruelest. My best friend's daughter, Mia Lopez, a young lawyer who'd interned at my firm, showed up at my door, tears streaming down her face. "Tia Walt," Sophia contacted my law firm. she sobbed. She said I'm helping you hide assets in offshore accounts, dragging my name into your mess. They're threatening to fire me. My stomach churned. Mia, who'd called me her mentor, who dedicated her first case to Evelyn's memory, had been targeted by Sophia's ruthlessness. Her loyalty was unshakable. She'd stood up to Sophia, but the betrayal was a dagger. Sophia's lies, the firm's suspicion, and the attack on Mia's career. The pain was a tsunami, drowning me in the realization that they'd stop at nothing to destroy me and those I loved. The knowledge of their vindictiveness, the lessons of their betrayal, and the education in their heartlessness were a bitter pill. I hugged Mia, my voice breaking. "Your family," I said. "They can't break us." My mind was a vortex, rage, and grief colliding like desert storms. Ethan's silence was a betrayal, louder than Elaine's threats, Victor's judicial plot, or Nathan's safety lies. The love I had for him was a wound that bled with every memory, his first deal, his promises to honor Evelyn, the way he'd vowed to make me proud. I'd built an empire for him, sacrificed everything, only to be cast out like garbage. The shame was a lead weight, but Julia's loyalty, Daniel's honesty, and Mia's courage were sparks in the darkness. I wasn't done. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. "Add this to the expose," I said, my voice steel. "Victor's judicial scheme, Nathan's safety lies, Sophia's attack on my niece. I want every lie laid bare." Lisa's voice was resolute. "This is a nuke, Walt. We'll detonate it." The war ended differently than I'd planned. Instead of letting their house go into foreclosure, I bought it at auction, turning their mansion into a community center for families like mine, those betrayed by greed. Ethan showed up one spring evening, his face haggard, his eyes pleading. "Dad, I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I let them poison me. Can we start over?" The pain was still there, but I saw a flicker of the boy I'd raised. "You'll have to earn it," I said, my voice steady. "No more handouts. Build something real." He nodded, and for the first time I saw hope. The lessons of this war were hard-won. Family isn't owed, it's earned. Knowledge of truth is power, and education and resilience is the greatest gift. To my viewers, I ask, what does this story stir in you? How does it reflect the betrayals and triumphs in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear the lessons from your heart. Subscribe to RevengeX on YouTube for more gripping stories daily. Like and share to spread the knowledge. And may you all enjoy good health, joy, and peace every day. Stay healthy, stay strong, and stay true. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay healthy, stay strong, and stay true. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay healthy, stay strong, and stay true. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video.